and welcome back to the 16th episode of Tiny Tabletop. I'm Jon,
I'm De Yang.
and here we talk about all things Aeons of Adventure related, our upcoming TTRPG that will be on Kickstarter, pre-launch link, pre-launch page in the description below. Right, and so today we're going to talk about polearms and how polearms are kind of like this archetype that is it's kind of nebulous in a lot of TTRPGs. They're not very well represented in the sense that you don't do spear things or polearm things with the polearm, you just hit them from a slightly further range, which is not exactly wrong. But we want to take that step further, right? We want to make it so that polearms and spears and all these kind of things are more of a fantasy and much more well represented and cooler in general. So let me see where is it okay, so without further ado, we'll be looking at the Polearm Mastery. So what is the Polearm Mastery?
So Polearm Mastery is basically like things related to spear, not really pikes, but lances. So like a slightly further range than your. So the typical traits are like your same as in Dungeons and Dragons, where you have the extra range, stuff like that. Two-handed, one-handed versions as well. So these are all classified into the polearms.
I have the stat blocks for the thing pulled up later, so we can take a look at the properties that we have. Yeah, as you mentioned, polearms are basically all things that are considered as polearms in the sense that halberds, spears, hastas, javelins, all of these things are considered under polearms, right? So anything that could be like a pole with a, it's an arm, right? So let's take a look at swap to this scene. Oops. Okay, so before we jump to this, just a bit of a primer here. So as always, these things are from the rulebook. So in the Aeons of Adventure basic set, it will come with a 64-page rulebook along with an adventure book. And in the rulebook, it will cover all of the things that are the masteries, character creation, races, and things like that, right? So all of these excerpts and descriptions are pulled from the rulebook itself. And a lot of it are examples and suggestions rather than actual like fixed classes. Right, so let's take a look at the descriptions. So the description for polearms is a tool through the skies like a sparrow, spiraling through flight, descending upon your foes with explosive force, or using the spear's reach to keep foes at bay while delivering rapid, piercing strikes. Let me just zoom in a little bit more. Okay. So Mastery in Polearm allows you to excel in mid-battlefield control with a blend of mobility, range, and power. So this is something that we want to focus a little bit on, which is that there's a little bit of range here. There's a bit of area control, area denial, which is very classic in terms of like D&D. You have Sentinel and Polearm Master and everything. And then you use large sweeping blows, long melee thrust, and a special dive mechanic. So the dive mechanic is kind of like the core trademark for every single Polearm skill, right? Take to the skies before descending down upon your enemies and dealing additional damage the further you fall, or the further you dive. Right, so it requires the polearm to be equipped as always. There are 5 skills, right? So you have Impale, Sweep, Maiming, Thrust, Vaulting Strides, and Eclipse 0, 1, 1, 2, 3. So your choice note here is at rank 1, right? Which is 1 point in. And examples of mastery combinations of polearms, as mentioned just now, these are suggestions. These are not classes. These are not you can use them as a preset, but these are just suggestions that you can if you don't have an idea of like how you can use your polearm masteries to combine with different masteries, here are some examples you can use. And the first one is usually something that is very typical, very focused on the core mastery by itself, and the second one is a bit more of a combination and a multi-class, right? So the first one is Valkyrie, traditionally your female warriors of the North, but in this case, this is more Valkyrie in the I forgot which game it was. It's one of the JRPGs. Basically, the Valkyries were dragoons, right? So you take to the skies, you crash down upon your foes with absolute devastation by taking full advantage of the dive property on your polearm skills, right? Which we'll get on to later. And the second one is the Arbiter. So the Arbiter is this kind of like what's that? This kind of like holy warrior, who's wearing heavy armor. You have radiant magic. You have a spear or a polearm in your hand, right? You are the law and the judge for your foes with your light enchanted spear, right? So if you guys have seen the previous Radiant Mastery deep dive, lights enchant is a thing, Radiant Strike is a thing. So taking full advantage of the reach of the spear is something that is very useful, right? Controlling large areas with an extended reach, floating divine armaments and shield, perhaps if you want to use a shield or a spear to deny their pleas, right? So before we go on to the skills itself, right, let's take a look at what spears are available, because I think this plays a very big part into the actual nature of the Polearm Mastery as a whole, right? We have three baseline mundane spears in Aeons of Adventure, right? We have the hasta, we have the halberd, and we have the scythe, right? We kind of class the baseline like one-handed javelin spear into the hasta. So the halberd is kind of like your two-handed version, and then the scythe is the finesse version, right? So let's take a quick look. Like, what are the differences between all three of them?
So the main difference is actually the so because AOA is a 2d6 roll, right? And for weapons, right, you are tying it to the stats of the player. So this is where the difference for the spears are, where mighty is using your strength and finesse. Was it finesse? Yeah, finesse uses your dex.
Finesse is both.
Both, yeah, both.
Yeah.
Then that's all right. Yeah.
The other thing is that so hasta is something that is quite unique to what we have in Aeons of Adventure, which is that this is the one-handed spear. It's classed as a spear for all intents and purposes, but it does not have reach. So the idea is that you can use your spear skills, you can still do all of the dive and everything, but you don't get the same kind of like 10-foot reach that the other spears have, right? And your halberd and your scythe, both of them are your classical polearms which have reach. The main difference being that scythe is a finesse weapon, right? And halberd is purely a mighty weapon. It does a little bit more penetration, right? But overall, scythe does more damage as a whole, right? As an entire package baseline, if you do not include your skills, right? So another note is that yes, hasta is light, so light means that it is one-handed, and heavy means that it is strictly two-handed, right? If an item was to be can be used by both one hand and two hands, it will be classed as versatile, which you'll see the brackets in, right? So that will be visible in the skills later, right? So with that, let's jump into the very first skill, which is impale. So here's the card, as always. So the cards. Oh, I actually have the card for this one printed, right? So we printed this for the demo that we ran at TableCon. So yeah, these are the example of the cards. Right. So the cards, as always, are there just to show you like what these things are referring to in the skill descriptions. So at the top left is the skill type, top right is the SP cost, the name, the tags, and then all of the effects are below, right? And all the way at the bottom is the mastery point cost of the actual skill itself. So this skill is impale. It is your rank 0 skill. It is your baseline kind of like normal attack for the spear. So what's impale?
So impale is just a very basic trait. So like what you mentioned, is actually a basic skill. It's the first skill that you take in the Polearm Mastery tree lah. So very basic. So this one is basically in your baseline trait will be you just deal 1 and the bracket 2. So I think just now you mentioned where if it's a one finesse weapon, right, you have 2 damage showcase in a sense, where the 1 is the one-handed and the within the bracket is always the two-handed version.
It's versatile, right? It's so versatile means that you can be used with both one hand and two hands.
Correct. So 1, 2 armor piercing as well as 4, 5 health damage. And then your great success will be just 1 health damage, and critical success will be 2 health damage. So here is where I think what you mentioned, the unique feature of Polearm Mastery is where it's there's this dive passive. So dive passive here, right? What it does is actually for every 5 feet you fall before using the skill, you deal +1. Yeah. So this is additive and it's not additional on top. So if you are doing so for example, if you land a hit, right, and you're using a two-handed weapon, right, you are dealing 2-5, and prior to doing this attack, you fall 5 feet. That means you're doing a 2-6.
Yeah. So just to clarify, this means that this is not an additional instance of damage. It's not a different hit. So in Aeons of Adventure, we have armor, which is why you have armor penetration there in the damage, right? So with armor, and armor reduces damage per hit. So if you were to hit someone multiple times, your damage reduction actually gets applied multiple times, right? So for example, if I have 3 armor and I get hit with 4 damage, I take 1. If I get hit with 4 damage 3 times, I take 3 damage because it's reduced 1, 1, 1 every single time, right? So in this case, addition, right, always adds to the single hit, which means that most of the time, if you are doing some kind of a falling attack with a spear, you'll be dealing at least a +1, +2 baseline, right? So what does that mean? That means that if you have a halberd and you fall from 5 feet and you slam someone, generally you're going to be dealing like 2-6 as a baseline. And if you're using a single hand hasta with a shield, then it will be 1-5, right? So that also means that typically with spears and polearms, you're doing a little bit more damage by default for all of your basic attacks, but that comes at a cost, right? That comes at the cost of you having to fall, which means that you are most of the time taking a move action of some sort. And you might also be thinking, it's like, okay, that's not, if you have to trade 1 SP for a move, just to deal like a little bit more damage, that's not particularly amazing, right? That's where things like being in the right place at the right time, or a little trait that you'll see later comes into play, which really amps up this singular effect, right? So a lot of this effect comes from the inspiration behind this effect is, well, your traditional like Final Fantasy Dragoon, along with characters like Pantheon in League of Legends, where there's this idea of like, you know, like jumping, skyfall, you know, stuff like that, right? Which is a really cool kind of fantasy that we have in the spears that I think is not very commonly explored in TTRPGs traditionally, right?
I think that's also because the design space for spears in your traditional TTRPG is just additional range.
Yeah.
So there isn't much that's done outside of that usually, and yeah, so that's why you don't get certain things like, oh, what if I do additional damage when I fall, stuff like that. Yeah. Because they're more focused on the range aspect, and you see like a lot of the traits and buff that they do to spears, right, are extending that range or somehow using that range to their advantage.
Yeah, I mean that's even more true for games that are not you know, they're not tactical, they're not how to say, you don't play them with a gridded map or a combat field. Those games where you play in theater of mind, range is kind of like nobody really cares about your melee range. Your extra 5 feet means nothing, right? Which means that you're completely stripping out the fantasy and the mechanical fantasy, specifically, right? The mechanical fantasy of a spear, right? Or a long, you know, reach weapon of that sort, right? So we wanted to, on top of the reach, give it an additional like design space that we can use to really bring this Polearm fantasy to life. Right. So yes, Impel, very simple skill as a basic, but it's starting to show you like what are these what's the common trend that you will see throughout every single Polearm Mastery skill. Right. So with that, let's move on to the second skill. So oh wait, wrong. Okay. So you'll find that the skills are gonna start getting a little bit longer, right? So the second skill is maiming thrust. And I think D&D players will find this skill very familiar. Right. And also, remember when I said that there were no, you know, opportunity attacks? Well, yeah.
I mean, we had opportunity attack also in
Swift Edge, right?
Swift Edge.
Yeah, backstab.
So I think currently these are the only two mastery that actually have opportunity attack type of skills built into them. We feel that spear should be the other one who gets it because it is pretty much in line with how a spear works as well. Yeah, because
you should be taking advantage of someone like, you know, just walking out of your reach.
So that's the design space we have for spear as well. But yeah, so I mean these are the design space that we have created for the basic set, and when we go into the full core set, right, that some of the skills might not even have this. Like they are like we might still have maiming trust in there, but the new skills might not be similar in that sense.
It might not take on the same kind of like design space that we have chosen for the basic set. But I think for polearms in particular, right, polearms cover quite a wide range already.
Correct.
Right. So let's take a look at what maiming trust is. Right. Maiming trust has many tags here.
So I mean most of the time it's because it's a opportunity attack skill first of all. And so what it actually does is react, which is in this case similar to opportunity attack, where when you react, the reaction condition here is when the creature exits your touch or melee range. So I think this is very important because we have the two different types of spears, right?
Yep.
And melee you will deal a melee weapon strike during what is it, 0-2? 0-2 armor piercing and 4 health damage. Then the target hit, right, will lose 15 movement speed till the end of their turn. Then for the great success, you deal +1 damage and they cannot move anymore. Right. And for a critical success, their movement speed is now reduced to 0. Is now set to 0.
Yes.
Right. So this means that if they were to take any movement action, they can move still.
Right. So this is like really strong movement denial at this point.
So similarly, you also have dive here.
Mm.
The bonus here is also a +1 for every 5 feet.
Right.
Yeah.
So even though dive is there, right, it is something that is a little bit hard to utilize with naming trust in particular because it has to react to someone moving out. So this is usually if it's your turn, you're doing a jump or move or something, and then for some reason like the enemy moves out of your range, you can use this strike immediately and kind of hit them, right? Because they have to exit your range, you can't exit their range. That's kind of weird, right? So yes, as I mentioned just now, if you have played Polearms in Dungeons and Dragons, really famous for your padlocks, your Hexblade Warlock, your Paladins with Sentinel Mastery and Sentinel and Polearm Mastery, right? You'll be very familiar with this skill, right? It's basically an opportunity attack that denies them movement. Traditionally, it's very problematic in D&D because it's a reaction.
It's a full action slot.
I mean, no, as in you don't use your action. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a action.
It's
It's action
basically a
slot in that
free.
it's reaction lah.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah. So reaction, it mothers out the game very much. Yeah. That's why you will only see that we try to restrict reaction in the first place here.
Right. Especially opportunity attacks in general. But for Aeons of Adventure, because this is a reaction and it uses 1 SP, so we run on an SP system, and SP is regained at the end of your turn. So if you were to use this reaction to do an opportunity attack on someone, that means that when it reaches your turn again, you are now down 1 SP, right? So there's a really high cost to this, but at the same time, it is really powerful. As a default, it does some damage, and they always lose movement speed, right? You don't need to land a single 6. You don't have to land 2 6s. You always lose 15 movement speed. So what that means is that let's just say someone moves like 5 feet out, right, and you hit them, you immediately deny them 15 feet of movement, which means that if their move action was to take them any further, you have now reduced that movement. If you hit them with a great success, which means you roll a single 6, you have now stopped the movement. So that action is now cancelled, even if they have remaining movement, because the way that move actions work in AoA is that when you take the move action, you spend 1 SP and you move up to your movement speed. This can be broken up within your different actions, but with this, you have now denied it. And the critical effect is really powerful because you're now completely setting their movement speed to 0, which means you're denying people who use shields, you're denying people who use daggers, because those skills use moves based on your character's movement speed. So if you remove their movement speed, then they can't move lah, right? So I think this is another counter towards shield characters and dagger characters in particular. Yeah, is there any other character? Okay, it's also kind of a denial towards other spear characters, which we'll get to later. Yeah, in a sense. I mean, falling isn't movement speed, so maybe not, but you can't get up.
But you can't.
Right?
But you need to take a move action to move.
Yeah,
so,
to move. Yeah, that's true.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. So this is your traditional opportunity attack Sentinel Polearm Mastery kit, right? For some additional notes, this is also a Bane because of the movement speed penalty. But generally you're gonna see Bane on anything that has some kind of a debuff on it that isn't a straight condition like prone, or shove. Those aren't considered debuffs, right? So is there anything else you want to add? One point. This is also a choice note. So this will be, you can choose this or the next skill will cover, or you can take both, right? So yeah, anything else you want to add on to this one?
No.
Okay, then let's move on to the very third skill, which is sweep. So this is the kind of like AoE option that you can get at the second point of the spear users. You'll find that this is kind of similar to Reef in Blade Arts, but not quite the same thing. It's a little bit more utility focused. So what's sweep?
So sweep here is unlike your first 2 skills, which is actually like attack rolls, right? This is actually a blast roll. So blast roll means you're not rolling.
Right.
First of all, so the targets that you're attacking are the ones that are rolling against you, and because of that, there is a tag here that says Dex, and that is because they are going to roll against your Dex saving throw here.
No. They make a Dex roll against your blast strength.
Yeah,
right.
Against your blast strength, which is in this case Dex lah. Right?
It's dependent on your weapon.
Dependent on your weapon.
Dependent on your weapon. So for example, if you're using a scythe, you use Dex, or strength, or might, right? And if you're using a halberd, you always use your might strength. So in this case, they will roll Dex against your might.
So I think that might need to edit in. Okay,
No, it's correct.
okay,
This is correct.
no. In a cone dealing 1-2 armor piercing and 4-5 health damage and knocking all of them prone. So we covered prone before, but just a refresher, prone means you just fall on the floor and you need to take a move action to stand up.
Right.
Right?
15
15 feet of
movement.
movement to
Right.
half.
No,
Yeah,
15.
half?
15.
15,
Yeah,
yeah,
15,
15,
feet.
So 15 foot of movement to stand up. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Then I think you get, what is the bonus to it?
Melee strikes
you-
against the
yeah,
creature gain advantage.
advantage, yeah.
And then range strikes against the creature gain a disadvantage. And the
Mm.
creature's own strikes gain disadvantages in general. Right? So
So
that's the effect of prone.
that's just the effect of prones lah. Then but they are only not prone if they are one size larger than you.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if you are medium, you can lock someone who's medium, large, small, but you can't knock someone who's huge down. Yeah.
Then similarly, you also have dive here, and
mm.
it's also for every 5 feet you deal +1 damage.
Right. I think for this skill, so for comparison, right, Reef is a strike. So you make a roll, you hit everybody in a cone in front of you, and it does fixed damage. Right. You can crit that one, you can get a crit success on that one. Whereas sweep here is a blast. So blast is saving throws. The targets who are being hit have to attempt to dodge your attack. Right. So you're trying to strike them and you're trying to dodge the attack instead. So in this sense, rolls are a little bit less important for polearms. You are less focused on things like stacking advantages, right? You don't really care about stacking advantages. You want your enemy to have disadvantages, but you don't really care about getting your advantages yourself, right? The next thing is that this is in a cone and it is a melee weapon blast. So something that's quite interesting with the way that we've done melee is that melee, because it scales to the range of your weapon, right? Having a polearm, having a halberd, having a scythe that is 10 feet reach means that your cone is also 10 feet long, right? And if you have light's reach from your Radiant Mastery, it is now 15 feet long. So this is a really, really, really long ass cone, right? And that applies to basically every single thing inside the Polearm Mastery or anything that's melee in general in AoA, right? So we're trying to play a lot with this idea of like melee having multiple ranges in particular, and how it influences things like AoEs, right? So in this case, it's cone lah. So you have a 10 feet cone if you're using a halberd or scythe. If you're using a hasta, then it is a 5 feet cone, which is very similar to your reef, right? So yes, you strike the guys, you strike all of them, you knock all of them down, they fall prone, and then yeah, you basically get to knock them down. But something that's interesting here is that this is AoE, so 2-5 for AoE for 2 SP. It's quite efficient for having 2 targets at least. Even for 1 target, it's not bad because you knock the guy prone, right? But what gets a little bit out of hand sometimes is that you have the dive effect here. So dive effect here, if you fall every 5 feet, +1, right? So +1 in AoE situation is really, really strong. So you start getting 2-6, 2-7, 2-8, depending on how high you're falling right now. For AoE attack, that is 2 stamina costs, right? So that's where you start to see, okay, like now we're really amping up the dive effects for Polearm Mastery. So it's also a versatile skill, also Polearm, Blast, all of those tags, we already know what they are, right? So now let's move on to what really gels all of these Polearm skills together, which is the 4th skill, which is also a trait. Do note this is a rank 2 Polearm skill, which means you must have already spent 2 points into Polearms. So it is not a quick and easy, like kind of like go in and pick up this skill and leave kind of thing, right? So don't worry too much about that unless you're very high level, right? So 4th skill is vaulting strikes, and yeah, like I said just now, this is the gel. So what is this?
So vaulting strike, right? As part of your move action, you are able to jump up to double, right? No. You're able to jump lah. So basically, your jump height now is 10 times might. Wait, 10 plus might times 5. Yeah. So if you have for about 2 might, right? +2 to might, right? That means you're jumping 20 feet, right?
Yeah, +2, yeah,
plus 2, so 20, around 20 feet there. Using a move action. Then this is where the key important thing is that you do not take 4 damage.
Right.
With a
really important here.
Yeah. You do not take 4 damage if it's less than
2 times your jump height.
2 times your jump height. Yeah. So that means that with the strength of 2, your jump height is now 20. That means you do not take 4 damage, like if it's 40.
40.
40, yeah.
So you can be 20 feet above ground or your target, jump 20 feet up, and then fall 40 feet down. Right. So what does that mean in practice? Right. I think there's something that's important to note here is that as part of a move action, you may also jump. By default, right, when you jump, you're already using your move action. So that means you can't run. You don't travel horizontally. You only travel like that. Right. So you either high jump or you far jump, but you can't like high and far jump. But with vaulting strikes, you can now high and far jump. So you can move, horizontally up to your movement speed and make this jump at the same time. Right, you're gaining a lot of vertical movement. Right, so that is what that first line means. And the second line is your jump height is 10 plus might times 5 feet. Right, this is something that we want to emphasize because we want to have the ability to play a full dex kind of like character for polearms, but that is not the space for the jumping part of polearms, right? So the polearm space with the jumping is the might version, and then the dex version is something else, right? Of course, you can still go dex, you don't have to pick up vaulting strikes. Basically, you can pick up just the next skill instead of vaulting strikes. You pick up the maiming thrust and sweep, right? So that's something that is here, and that's also because the default jump height is based on might, right? It's based on the strength of your legs rather than how fast you can jump, right? Which, I mean, is also kind of dependent on your might, but that's besides the point, right? So your jump height is 10 plus might times 5. So baseline is 10. Typically when you create a character, your highest additive stat is +2 unless you are rolling for your stats, right? Or point by, and then typically your character goes up to +3 or +4. Right. So what are we looking at? We're looking at about 25 feet of movement upwards or about 30. Generally, and at the start, level 1, you're looking at 20 feet up. So now let's take a look back at all of the previous skills, right? Impale, maiming, thrust, and sweep. What does that mean? That means that if you always move before you hit someone, you basically get a +4, provided you're not indoors, right? Because if you're indoors, you just hit the ceiling, right? So if you're in an open area, if you're in a battlefield, if you're in like a ruins with like a cave in, then the ceiling is exposed, you can just jump up and then dive down on someone, right? So that's where we start to get that kind of that diving fantasy, that the dragoon fantasy, or the pantheon League of Legends kind of fantasy going on right here. And the last point is also really important. We say just now, don't take fall damage, right? So default fall damage is really high, right? If you fall, I think above like 10 or 15 feet, you're taking I think 2 damage for every 5 feet of true damage. So you cannot mitigate this damage at all, right? So if you didn't have this and you jump 40 feet in the air and you land down, you immediately take like 16 damage, you just die, right? And HP in AoE is really, really low. Level 5 characters have about 18 HP. So falling that amount, you just die you just die instantly. So we had to add this kind of clause to be like, okay, you want to jump, can jump, right? And you have to deny that fall damage somehow. If not, this is going to be lethal on basically every single polearm character. You're going to make the dragoon meme from Final Fantasy like legit, right? Where they're constantly just dying from their own high jumps. But yeah, I think this opens up a completely new kind of like dynamic to playing a spear character or a polearm character in TTRPGs, because not only can you have this kind of like vertical mobile movement, but at the same time, you're now the character who's able to plant yourself into very weird spots in the battlefield, right? It has become something of an kind of like an assassin, right? But a much more, how do I describe it?
Not shadowy focus.
Yeah. You're very flashy. Everybody knows you're coming. You're diving through the sky. The sun's beaming from behind you. The silhouette. Right? You're landing upon someone. You're not a very stealthy assassin. You are very open. I think traditionally, I guess this would fit the idea of like your Nova Paladins in D&D, where they will like go to a spot and just nuke someone, right? But not in a quiet way, in a very flashy Radiant Smite kind of way, right? So yeah, Vaulting Strikes gels all of the other skills in the dive version of the polearm kind of play style, right? Yeah, think that?
So this actually gives you a lot of ways also. So because the main thing here is you do not take 4 damage, right? So that means that you can do a lot of setup. So like, okay, I can jump and then I can stay on like ruins, like the pillar, stuff like that, and then from
jump on the
there
pillar.
then
Yeah.
you jump down. Or you actually can use this, right? So when out of combat, you can actually use this as a way to like scout areas and locations, stuff like that, because from a height advantage you can see you can probably see better, correct?
Right.
So this skill actually is not only is it useful in combat, but I think outside of combat it has its users as well.
Yeah.
Unlike
Definitely.
correct. Unlike other, I think this is one of the more role playing skill as well, like more usable during role playing aspect. Yeah.
It is borderline flight. Right?
Mm.
It is kind of like flight, but this is not flight as a race, but rather flight as a
Skill.
as like you basically take your spear and you pivot yourself in the sky, kind of idea. So still more okay with that rather than having flight as part of a ratio, at least passively lah. If it becomes a ratio, it will have to have cost, right? Either a few times a day or there'll be SP cost to it lah, right? But in this case, this is passive because you have taken these points into using your Polearm Mastery, right? So with the very last skill, this skill is the most inspired by League of Legends. Like you have Xin Zhao and Pantheon here, which is Eclipse.
So it's basically a kind of a better version of sweep in a way. So it's actually similar to sweep in that it's a melee weapon blast, but this time around it's an emanation around you, right? And that's one. So here you don't see a difference between the one-handed and two-handed version for the armor piercing. So both does one, but the damage wise, right, it's 4 for one-handed and 6 for two-handed. And not only that, you also knock back all of the target's hit to the edge of your melee range. So for a small light one-handed spear, you'll be 5 feet out, and for
5 feet away.
Correct. And for a two-handed version, you'll be 10 feet away. And with light switch, it becomes 15 feet. So based on your melee range,
Yep.
But if there are no if their sizing is not one above you, so
not more than
one
one
above you. So medium is to large and below, basically. Right. Then I think this is the main difference between Eclipse and the other few skills, where the dive here, right, you see is actually +2 for every 5 feet instead. And this is also a 2 stamina point cost skill, similar to sweep as well.
Right. So this is kind of meant to be the currently, as of the basic set, the most synergistic skill to Vaulting Strides, right? So this is your Grand Skyfall combined with like Xin Zhao's like dueling ulti kind of arena thing. Or if you want to think about it in terms of like a Final Fantasy thing, it'll be like your Dragonfire dive, your Star Divers in Final Fantasy 14, right? You're jumping in the air and you're landing down from a very great height, and it's supposed to do a lot more damage based on the height that you have fallen. So let's do a quick calculation here. So just now when we were mentioning that your jump height could go up to about plus 30, right? So 30 up. So 30 up means you get 6 because you have 30 over 5, right? So you're 6 feet up, right? So what that means on average is that if you are jumping a full 30 every single round where you're using this skill, you are adding 12 damage. Here's the thing. So it's a blast. So blast has a good odds of your opponent actually dodging the ability, because the way that it's weighted right now is that generally blast will hit less often, but because it's a SP system, you get to blast people very often, right? So they have a slightly higher chance of dodging your ability, but if they don't, then we're going to do a lot of damage, right? We're looking at least what are we looking at? So 1/6, that means you're adding 12, that's like 118, right, for your full 3 SP. And even if you're using a one-handed spear, that's still a lot of damage, right? That is 1/16 if you're doing to one person. Now imagine we hit multiple people. The problem here is that this is emanation. So this is a circle around you. This hits everybody. This is really your Grand Skyfall. But your Grand Skyfall hits your own allies in reality, right? So in the TTRPG, if you are going to dominate the battlefield, that also means that you're dominating the battlefield around your allies as well, right? So if they're next to you, you're next to a wizard, or you're next to like your friendly like support unit, this might not be the best skill to use. You might want to ask them to like step out, which just brings us to the point of like the idea of SP and initiative being side-based. So we have a side-based initiative where all of the players go at the same time, and then all of the enemies go at the same time, right? So which also means that if you're going to use this skill, you're going to move, you're going to dive into the enemy, you might want to ask your ally to like take 5 feet back, then you slam the ground, and then he steps forward again, because else you're going to be doing a lot of damage to your own allies as well. But I think this does encapsulate the ultimate fantasy that we're trying to achieve for the dive idea, right? Which is that, okay, the baseline damage is not so high, but we're going to ramp up that dive damage. We're really going to
Correct.
emphasize that thing. I think the potential for this is quite insane, like numerically in general.
So I think even without looking at the damage, right, the knockback itself is also pretty important here as well.
Yep.
Yeah. So you could dive into the enemy area and then you can knock the enemies into the allies
towards
area,
your allies. That's right.
so that they don't have to move anymore. There's also so that is where we are looking at from the tactical perspective as well, where how do we use certain skills to set up for other players.
Yes, that's right.
So this is one possible way, and with up to 15 feet range, right, this skill is very useful in that sense. And you can also do it in reverse, where you want to knock certain enemies away from you, away from your allies as well, and this is also one of the ways to do it.
You can kind of look at it as like AoE shove. So shove is a baseline action in AoE. Everybody can take it. You make a might blast against the enemy. The guy has to make a might blast save against your might strength, right? And then he will attempt to resist your push, right? In this case, they have to dodge your attack. So because of the way that our characters are balanced, right? A lot of the enemies use very similar rules to your players, and thus whether or not Dex is one of their +1s is very, very subjective, right? There are many times when Dex is not a +1, and that means that they're more likely to have might than Dex if you're going to be facing them in melee, right? Because you're going to have to dive into melee action anyway, so there's a good chance that their might is higher than their Dex, right? Especially if they're wearing heavy armor. So the ability for you to land a hit and shove a armored target with this skill rather than your shove skill is higher. And on top of that, it also has a further range if you have a halberd being 10 feet, right? So you can push them up to 10 feet away. And then if you have light's reach, you can push them up to 15 feet away, right? Which is quite insane. It also means that this is a 15 feet AoE with light's reach and a 10 feet AoE with halberd. Right? So baseline, it is also just a very big AoE around you. In playtest, we have had many situations where you've had to jump into a slightly awkward position because you don't want to hit your ally, or you might want to hit additional groups of people due to the range of your weapon. But I think that is something that has to be, you kind of have to bite the bullet there because of how powerful this skill is. It is deceptively strong. Yeah, it is not deceptively strong if you don't jump. It's still good, but it's not amazing, but still 2 SP, right?
So I think this one, right, because it's 2 SP, and with your move, if you want to combine this with jumping, right, you will have basically almost no stamina left and nothing to do after this. So do take that into consideration if you want to use the jumping aspect as well. But if you don't want to jump, right, you could just, so like that awkward spot you were mentioning, you will jump in front and then you just use a movement action to come back to reset the thing. Stuff like that works as well.
If for example you're very near to the enemy already and you kind of want to just like jump on the guy, kind of like your traditional high jump in Final Fantasy, right? You can do that, and because you don't travel horizontally much, it doesn't take up your movement speed. So that means you could jump. For example, if the enemy is maybe, I don't know, 10 feet away, right? And you want to jump on him, right? So you could jump and then like move back 10 feet, because you've only moved 10 feet forward and then you can move 10 feet back, or 15 feet forward, 15 feet back. If you have more movement speed, then maybe 20 feet forward, 20 feet back, right? And that is very much a possibility to always maintain that distance. And that is something that is also very indicative of the ability for you to use your spear to deny large areas, right? This idea of just, you have control, everything within this area is within your reach, and you can get to them and you can screw them up really badly just by being near them. It's really like a battlefield presence, right? And that's something that we really wanted to focus on and get that feeling right. I remember when we designed polearms initially, it was basically just another melee attack, right? Everything was another melee attack, which was it was very basic. It was very basic.
The dive mechanic didn't come in until quite
after Swift Edge. After we got the Swift Edge fantasy down. So yeah, we'll get into that in a bit. So with this, is there anything else to add for Eclipse?
No.
Okay, then let's go through the full summary again, right? Bam. So yeah, as always, we're gonna go through a summary of all of the things that we have seen so far. So with the descriptions, all of your skills are there. If you want to pause and zoom in, feel free to do so. Right. So first skill we have Impale, your basic attack. A little bit of dive. You can see the damage is fairly consistent here. A little bit higher than default compared to all of the other characters and melees. Right. Second one is Maiming Thrust, your traditional opportunity attack reaction, sentinel, polearm mastery kind of thing. Very powerful against units who rely on movement speed and scale on movement speed. Your Swift Edge, your Sentinels, and whoever needs to move a lot, right? Your polearm guys as well. Skill number 3, Sweep. It's your kind of debuff, setup skill, also your AoE skill. Number 4, Vaulting Strikes. Gel of your character, what makes you now a jumping style, like diving character. And then skill number 5, which I have to turn the description off for. Skill number 5 is Eclipse, which is the kind of capstone for the Polearm Mastery in the basic set, which is your big circular AoE, just jump down, dive, and smack everybody apart kind of skill that does a crap ton of damage, right? And also really good for setting up for other melees or for setting up or to separate targets from each other, right? And so that encapsulates kind of like the core set, the basic set of our Polearm Masteries in the basic set of Aeons of Adventure, right? So let's briefly talk about kind of like the design journey that we've had coming into Polearm Mastery. So Polearm Mastery, we knew from the very start we wanted polearms. That one we knew for sure because polearms are kind of like your classical weapons that you have in TTRPGs.
It was also the only range weapon that reach
weapon,
melee weapon that we have. We did think about pikes and quite specific pikes.
Lance was one of the things.
Pike was supposedly the one. So lance, yes, but that was when we were going to design mounted combat. So that is something that we also wanted to implement, but unfortunately it was not as cool as the diving aspect, so we went with the diving one instead of the mounted lance wielder fantasy there lah. And similar to pike, so these are the only few weapons that have reach. Yeah, so we knew we wanted polearms just because of that. Yeah, and it's cool lah. Like, why don't you want to play and I think that also led up to the creation of the one-handed version of it as well, because actually initially we only had the two-handed version.
Yeah, initially it was just basically halberd.
Correct. Right. So it was two-handed, but I think it was the option to use it as one-handed, so that because we wanted it to mix with the spear, mix with the shield.
Yeah.
Correct. So we wanted a shield wielding, basically a Spartan, right? That whole the phalanx, the phalanx, the 300, that movie, the
shield wall.
Correct. So we wanted that fantasy as well. Then that was when we were like, okay, never mind. Let's just create a subtype of, not say a subtype, but a mundane version of the spear being one-handed. And then we were like, okay, let's just keep the mighty or the finesse
finesse
version of the spear as well. So that is how we have the 3 different types of spears here. Yeah.
Right. For clarification, right? Pikes are technically polearms. It's just that when we talk about pikes here, we're talking about the pike fantasy. So super long spear, no diving, right? We're talking about like ground combat, a bit more.
Maybe longer.
If you want to compare, it'll be more like Xin Zhao in League of Legends, right? Like your qiang is in like the Chinese spear, the twirly ones, right? Or like a really long. So imagine like a one-handed the hasta, right? But with reach instead. However, that would have to come with certain drawbacks. It cannot be the current state and then you also have reach. That would be insane. Right? A one-handed, imagine everything that you had right now, but you can use a shield and you have reach. Like that's really, really powerful. So they have to come with some drawbacks in the future.
The fantasy for the pikes one will be like the pikemans that we have that you see, like that is usually used against like cavalry. So there's a pike fantasy that we have, but
very much so more of like a battlefield.
Correct, but that was the initial design and we were like, that's boring. So after we were like, okay, we need to somehow make it interesting, but I think the diving one will be better, so we pivoted towards the diving one instead. Yeah.
It also relates a little bit more to the JRPG inspirations. So
you don't see pikes in JRPGs.
I mean, you do. It's just not interesting as
Yeah,
well,
it's just not
right?
yeah, it's not
It's also not
interesting,
interesting. So that's the design space that we'll have to spend a lot more time to
Mm.
think about and get something that's cool
Mm.
and fun and different, right? We don't want it to just be another melee weapon,
Mm.
right? Yeah, it should be different. Every melee weapon should have kind of like its own niche, its own users. There should be times when it is OP and times when it is not,
Mm.
right? So that's the trade-off that every single mastery, not just melee, every mastery should have.
Mm.
But the main issue here is that you have direct comparisons, right? You have direct comparisons between like swords, axes, maces, daggers, and all this stuff. So they should feel different, they should play different, and it should be fun, right? They should also be able to multi-class with other things, which is one of the reasons why the hasta existed. So you can multi-class with the shield, right? And the other thing that is quite unique to what we have in AoA is that armor classes are not tied to your core masteries. So with the polearm, you can choose to go something that's more evasion based. If you want your dex version, you want to go with your typical like heavy armor one, you also can, right? It doesn't have a penalty on your dive or your jump, right? We don't track those kind of things, right? I think that's just like trying to stop your fun at this point.
And I think no matter which armor type you take, right, there is always something for the spear lah. Because if you were to take like the light armor, you have your increased movement speed, which is
Longer
obviously
jumps.
great here.
Yep.
And if you go for the heavy mastery, you have the flank, getting the flank thing. I think you get 1 AC if you're getting flank or something. I can't remember.
And by planting yourself into the middle of enemies,
you're always getting flank,
right?
So there's just a free armor from there, and that combines very well with a shield. Correct. Like that whole tanky spear wielding shield guy in the middle of nowhere. Right. Basically
in the middle of nowhere. in the middle of the in the midst of the fray. Right?
Basically pantheon. It's actually basically pantheon, but
literally Grand Skyfall into the backline.
But if you wear clothes.
Yeah, if you wear clothes.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, on top of that, like that synergy in particular, right? I think it's also interesting because you can invest all your points in the might, and then because you don't care about your dexterity if you wear heavy armor, right? Dexterity imposes basically no bonuses to your evasion if you're wearing heavy armor. So you can dump your dex, right? Go full into your vigor, which increases your health. And in the example that we gave for the arbiter, you can put your points into charm. Right? So charm allows you to heal yourself or smack the guy with a radiant strike if you want to, right? So if you guys are interested, you can go take a look back at what is available in the Sentinel Mastery and the Radiant Mastery and see some of the possible combinations that I think that are really interesting. Like the one that I really like is a Divine Armament with Polearms, because what you get is you have this kind of like floating spear with you, and it mimics one of your skills that cost 1 SP and below, right? So you don't actually need to spend a lot of points in the Polearm Mastery. You just need to spend your baseline, your maiming, your impale and your jump. And you could jump and use your impale, and your armament will also use the jumping impale, right? So you get like a really powerful double attack. However, it also requires you to be level 5 lah, right? And requires setup. So there's a cost to it, but it is also really, really powerful, right? Some interesting combinations. Shield charge. Imagine you could shield charge, but you could also jump. Because any creature that you can reach with a move action, right? So your shield charge, your interventions go vertical as well. So now you are really like that kind of like Valkyrie concept. You have a one-handed spear, a shield, and you're dashing over to your allies to protect them even when they're vertically away from you. You can jump mid-air and block someone, right? Or you can jump mid-air and grapple someone, right? So more possibilities over there. And I think spear is one of the is it the best base for multi-classing? I don't think so, but it is really good. It is really good.
It's really good, yeah. So I think martial wise, right? Spear is probably the better ones for multi-classing. Better ones in like there's a lot more like options you can do with spear than like the rest lah. But yeah.
I mean, Sentinel is kind of support, right? So I don't really count Sentinel as like
not really
core. You can play as your main mastery, right? But then it is typically added with something else, right? Either the Radiant or your another martial weapon, or maybe you want to go for a caster, right? Caster with shield. Polearms definitely want to be your main one, your main mastery. So the points that the mastery that you spend more points into. Another one that is pretty good for multi-classing, I think currently that we have reviewed is Blade Arts. So Blade Arts has your riposte and everything, so you get a lot of like free SP users and stuff. So you're able
Archery,
to
not
set up your own
really.
combo. For what?
Archery not
Archery
really. Archery do
less
so.
Archery is pretty good by itself.
Correct.
Yeah.
If I think archery, if you really want to multi-class, right, it only gets better. Like the trade-off is better after level 5. You need a
yeah, you spend a bit of
you need to
points.
spend a bit more points in archery. Yeah. Unlike like
well, if you guys have seen the other mastery reviews and you find a cool combo, leave it in the comments below. Right. So right now, off the top of my head, I don't think there are many amazing combos, but I might be missing something right now.
There is doable. There is achievable by level 5.
Yeah, achievable by level 5.
That's the key point that we are thinking like right now, which is what crazy fantasies that you can achieve at level 5.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else to add for Polearm Masteries in general?
No.
Okay, let's over. Okay. So as always, we are launching our Kickstarter for Aeons of Adventure, our upcoming TTRPG. Ideally by the end of the year. Currently, it is in its pre-launch phase. So all of the descriptions, all of the links are in the description below. So our pre-launch page is there. Our social media like X, Instagram. What else we have? Discord channels. I think there's TikTok, right? But I never really upload much of a TikTok, so I mean you can follow us there, but it's gonna be mostly here. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave a comment below, it boosts like all the algorithm stuff, right? Recently one of our videos for some reason hit more than 1K, so something is working obviously, right? So yeah, go follow us, and with that, I've been John.
So a bit of update also is that next week.
Right, that's true.
So next week we will not be having another mastery review. We will still do our behind the workbench. That will be on Wednesday our time lah. Not sure. I think it's also Wednesday there.
Yeah, it's Wednesday. It's just Wednesday morning there.
Yeah.
So it's Wednesday morning in the US and Wednesday evening in Singapore. It's Wednesday, I think afternoon in the UK or something like that. Right, I think it's like 12 noon.
It's Wednesday everywhere, basically.
Yeah, it's Wednesday everywhere, basically. Yeah.
Then
the usual behind the workbench time.
So
if you guys have been there live.
Yeah. So that will be an update, and we'll be back the following week.
Yep.
For the final mastery that we have.
The final martial mastery.
Correct. And if you have seen our behind the workbench, you will have you have seen a sneak peek of what it is.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, because we showed the image there, yeah. So that is something that is
not in its full. It's just kind of like a
It's just an image.
It's just an image.
So it's just the card image that doesn't have the information of the card. So yeah. I think that's all for the admin stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. And so with that, I've been John.
I'm Taeyang.
Follow us on Kickstarter. And we're signing out.